Good morning, my friend. Hope you're doing well. 15th day of June 2022. And I want to thank you if you were the one to participate, one of the ones who participated in the hundreds of emails and social media posts we got yesterday for Lisa on her birthday to honor her. She felt very honored and encouraged, and I'm grateful for everybody who reached out and encouraged her yesterday. Back in Casper, before we moved in 2020 to Nebraska, I did an episode where I just introduced you to Lisa and let you get to know her a little bit. She has an inspiring story, and I think it would help you since there's so many new podcast listeners, and you may not have heard this before because it's been offline for quite some time. I thought this morning I've got a kind of an urgent case I have to go do at the hospital, so I'm not going to have time to bring you a whole new episode. So I thought, what a perfect way to wrap up Lisa's birthday celebration than to bring you, my friend, an opportunity to get to know her a little bit and probably see some aspects of your own life and her story, some challenges that she's faced and overcome, and just an inspiring conversation with the person I value most in this world, Lisa Warren. So here we go. We'll give it a chance for you to get to know Lisa, and I will see you tomorrow with something new, and I hope that you have an amazing day. Don't forget the prayer wall, wleewarrenmd.com/prayer, and don't forget the newsletter, drleewarren.substack.com, drleewarren.substack.com. That's where we connect in this community that's building all around the world, people changing their minds and changing their lives through self-brain surgery. We're going to get started with an opportunity to get to know Lisa right now.
Hey, are you ready to change your life? If the answer is yes, there's only one rule. You have to change your mind first. And my friend, there's a place where the neuroscience of how your mind works smashes together with faith and everything starts to make sense. That place is called self-brain surgery. You can learn it, and it will help you become healthier, feel better, and be happier. And the good news is you can start today.
Thanks, Lisa. Hey, so glad to have you listening today. I'm Dr. Lee Warren, and I live in Nebraska in the United States of America with my incredible wife, Lisa, my father-in-law, Tata, and the super pups, Harvey and Lewis. I'm a neurosurgeon and an author, and I'm here to help you harness neuroscience, the power of your brain, faith, the power of your spirit, and good old common sense to help you lead a healthier, better, happier life. Listen, friend, you can't change your life until you change your mind, and I'm here to help you learn the art of self-brain surgery. To get it done, you can get the show notes and more at drleewarren.podbean.com. That's drleewarren.podbean.com, and if you like the show, please subscribe so you never miss an episode, and tell your friends about it. If you tell 2 or 3 friends this podcast was helpful to you, imagine how much good we can all do around the world together. I'm Dr. Lee Warren, and I'm here to help you change your mind so you can change your life. Let's get after it. Hey friend, Dr. Lee Warren here. I am excited about this podcast because I have a very special guest with me today, and we're going to get right into it. You hear me talk a lot, maybe more than normal amount, about my wife, Lisa Warren. And she's obviously heavily involved in everything that I do, my ministry, my work, my writing, every podcast. Lisa is truly my sidekick and better half in every way that could be measured or described. And today, I thought, since I get so many emails every week saying, hey, please ask Lisa to pray for me. Thanks for all that you and Lisa do. I felt like it would be appropriate for you to know more about who Lisa is as a person. So today we're going to get to know Lisa Warren, her story, her struggles, her big moments, her situation, and kind of what makes her tick and why she is such an effective partner for me and why I'm always telling you about her. So today we're going to get to know Lisa Warren. This is episode 25 of the Dr. Lee Warren podcast, and we're going to get right into it. And of course, as always, we're going to start today.
Hey folks, this is Weldon Lister with American Scroll, and we're a proud sponsor of the Dr. Lee Warren podcast. You might ask, well, what is American Scroll? And I would say, hey, we're an apparel brand that's based on the scroll art that I've developed as a master engraver. You can find more about American Scroll and see our products at americanscroll.com or unclesi.com. And as a special for the Dr. Lee Warren podcast listeners, just use Dr. Lee at checkout and you'll get 20% off. Thanks and have a great day.
Okay, we are here in our dining room. I think I said living room a while ago, but it's actually our dining room. And I'm here with my favorite person in the whole world and my extra special guest today, Mrs. Lisa Warren. Hey, Lisa, how are you doing today?
I am doing terrific.
You look terrific, too. She's really pretty. I wish you could see her right now. Sorry, I'm not trying to embarrass you, honey. I wanted to ask you, Lisa, to come on the show today because I really, as you know, we get emails every week, almost every day, from somebody somewhere, and they always say, "Can you and Lisa pray for me?" or "Thanks for all that you and Lisa do." And this really, truly is a joint venture, isn't it? This work that we do.
It is. We are 100% a team.
That's right. And when people say, Dr. Warren, I really love your books, like I always say, well, gosh, Lisa pretty much lived, helped write, edited, was part of every word of every page of those stories, haven't you been?
Yes, definitely.
I mean, not only are my books really our stories because I write memoir about my own life, but so they obviously involve you a lot, but you also have been instrumental in encouraging me to write and podcast and email and all the things that I do, but also in helping me process all the stuff that we've been through. Mm-hmm. And so I wanted to just take a few minutes today, 20 or 30 minutes, to really give the other side of that story. So people hear about me all the time and they hear me talk about you all the time, but I thought it would be great if they could just hear you talk a little bit today. So thanks for doing that.
Of course.
Tell us first about just a basic background of where you grew up and where you came from and that sort of thing.
Well, I kind of grew up everywhere. My dad worked for a company that moved us around about every 4 to 5 years, so I didn't live anywhere very long until I was in college and lived in San Antonio, Texas, for probably the longest period of my life. So I've lived all over the country. It kind of formed who I am today because I was always the new person. Very fortunate that my parents encouraged us to be involved in sports and cheerleading and gymnastics, and I was on swim team. They really gave us an opportunity to, no matter where we went to school, we had some way to plug in. And so I can remember knowing that we were moving in the middle of my sophomore year in high school, and I mean, I was heavily involved in all those things I just mentioned, every sport and journalism club and Junior National Honor Society, and then being told that we were getting ready to move. Well, my dad flew us to Dallas so that we could try out for dance team, for cheerleading, for the football team, so that we would already be plugged in when we got there. So,
just to be clear, cheerleading for the football team, not trying out for the football team, right?
No, that was my brother.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, I just want to clarify that.
So football team was my brother, dance team was my sister,
right.
Cheerleading was me.
Right.
We all played sports too.
But you undersold yourself a little bit. You actually got some pretty significant opportunities in swimming and in gymnastics, right? You were kind of talked about maybe for Olympic trials and that sort of thing.
Junior Olympic
trials.
Yeah.
In which sport?
In gymnastics.
Right.
But because we moved around so much, it was really hard to find a new club. But it did give me a really great job that I always had. Starting at 14, I taught gymnastics all the way until I was 35. Wow. And the girls that were in the tumbling class kept getting taller and bigger, and I kept being 5'2", and the time I got kicked in the face, I was like, I'm done. I think I've contributed to gymnastics long enough.
Long enough.
Yeah.
And then you went to college and you got, I think it was 37 degrees. Is that right? How many majors did you have?
If you ask my parents, I remember one time my dad set me down and he was like, just wondering if we could have a little chat. Are you going to decide on something because you keep changing your major? I could have been a professional student. I loved it. I took more philosophy classes, even though philosophy was not even required for any of the degrees that I attempted. The final one, I got a degree. Well, when I started out in college, I was pre-law, and then decided to do something different instead of just going strictly with what everybody else, that my friends that were pre-law. I did a double major of history and political science and then an English minor because I loved reading, which if you think about those three things, all I did was read all through college. I always had more books than any of my friends. but I ended up not going to law school, and I'm very grateful that I didn't now.
Me too.
But I think that the thing that I loved was I loved learning. And so that's why I jumped around quite a bit. But
Right.
I finally did get a degree and ended up going back to school later after Josh and Caitlin were born. And I realized I loved psychology and I loved interacting with people, and people tend to tell me, their problems and things that are going on in their lives that are very intimate. And I thought, well, what could I do with that? And so I went back to school to become a psychologist. I lacked like 12 hours. And then I also realized that was not for me. This is going to sound bad if you're a psychologist out there. I apologize. This is only talking about the people in my program in Texas. But there were a lot of Birkenstocks and corduroy, and I was like, this is not me. And so at that time is when I also realized that I've always loved to cook.
Right.
First time I made a gourmet meal, I was 10 years old. My mom got all the ingredients for me. And I've cooked my whole life. I love it. I read cookbooks like people read novels.
She does.
And I thought, well, I'm going to open a catering business. So I did, and was very successful. It's very, very hard work. I did that for about 4 years, almost 5 years, and then kind of parlayed that into being a personal chef, because I ended up doing catering jobs for the same people
Right.
over and over and over. And then they would ask me to do things in the middle of the week. And it was like, okay, this is also a job. I tried to do both at the same time for a while. And when you're cooking for someone 5 days a week, and at one point I was cooking for 5 families 5 days a week. And of course, still then cooking for my family. But I realized I couldn't do the catering anymore. And once I had a couple of really big clients that wanted me to cook for them, like breakfast, lunch, and dinner 5 days a week, I realized I needed to quit catering. So I did, and did the personal chef thing for a good while.
Right. Now, I know you're not comfortable sharing the names of people that you were personal chefs for. You have a saying about that, right?
Yeah, personal chefs don't kiss and tell.
That's right. But just to give you some credibility here on the show, Lisa was a personal chef for a major New York Times bestselling writer, and then at a different time, an NBA Hall of Fame basketball player while he was playing in the NBA. So she's not just your average, like a home-trained chef. She's actually a professional, world-class chef who's got some amazing stuff on her resume. And I can attest with my ever-expanding waistline to how great of a cook she is. Now, one thing, you mentioned Josh and Katie, and I'll just put this out there for folks. If you've been following us for a while or listening or if you've read any of my books, you know this already. But just to clarify any potential confusion, Lisa and I have a blended family, and we both are each other's second spouse. So that, those are stories for other episodes probably. But Josh and Caitlin are Lisa's biological children, and Kimberlyn, Mitchell, and Kaylin were my biological children. But when we got married in 2006, this is kind of an interesting story. We made a decision when we got engaged, and talk about that for a second, like how our families, if we were going to blend them, how was that going to look for us?
There wasn't going to be step anything. In fact, we prayed really hard about should we get married, because if we couldn't make a family, not a blended family, but a family out of these two families that had gone through hard things, then I really didn't feel like it was worth it. And we prayed really hard that God would put together these lives and create one family. And He did.
He did.
I've had people tell me who didn't know that we were a blended family and found out later that they never would have guessed.
Yeah.
I've had friends who have blended families and have said they just don't understand how we have this our kids don't call each other, oh, that's my stepbrother or that's my stepsister. It's, this is my brother, this is my sister.
That's right.
And they love each other. They have relationships together that have nothing to do with us. We did a really good job of making them realize that we were a family, 100% just a family, not a blended family.
And I think honestly, as we were considering getting together, the kids did that themselves. I mean, they really blended themselves and became part of each other's lives and said vows to each other and to us at our wedding. And so they really, we would not have gotten married if it hadn't been possible to do it that way.
Right.
And from my standpoint, I have never one time ever said to anybody that Josh or Caitlin were my stepchildren. I've never introduced them in any way other than just my kids. And it's funny because we've got friends, we moved from from Alabama to Wyoming 4.5 years ago. And we've got friends here that haven't met our kids because they're all grown now. And they don't know that we're blended. They see pictures. They don't know. They see a picture of our grandkids, and nobody knows that there's any biological difference in anybody, which I think is really a special thing. Okay, so not to get too far down that path, but I just wanted to make sure that folks are aware that we had, like everybody's story, our backstories aren't perfect.
Right.
And there's been some challenges and some struggles. So tell me about some of the things that you've struggled with.
Oh, wow. You mean now or my whole life?
Yeah. Well, let me frame the question a little bit bigger. So, let's talk professionally first of all. In your careers, the various careers that you've had, what's one of the biggest professional struggles you've ever encountered?
Well, part of it, I think, is because I've always been kind of a jack of all trades person, and I used to think that was a negative.
Yeah.
Because you have a very singular career path. You have these other things now that you're doing, writing, podcasting, other things you've developed into, but you had a very singular path. And I had one that's kind of all over the place. And I think that's kind of part of our personalities, and I think that's why we fit together so well, is that we've had very different backgrounds,
right,
and we have very varied interests and things that, excite us or challenge us.
Right.
But I think I took that for a long time. I thought that was a really negative thing. Well, why am I doing all these things instead of just putting all my efforts into one thing? And what I realized is really I was doing one thing. I was in a service-oriented business, regardless of what I did. When I was a caterer, it was, where I was serving people.
Right.
And when I was a personal chef, I was serving people. And when I went back to school again and became an interior designer, I was serving people. And the one thing that I think, so I have all these things that I've done, but the one thing they do is they are serving people, but they're also helping people make their lives better.
That's right.
And that's what you do, even in your medical career, but also in your writing and podcasting. You are working towards helping people make their lives better.
That's right. Now, one thing you said that I think we ought to expand on a little bit is it's not that you just woke up one morning and said, I think I'll change my career today, or I think I'll go do something new today. I think there's at least 3 that I know of time periods in your life when you did something or educated yourself and started a business because you had to.
Right.
Right. So something came along, some crisis happened in your family, and you needed to step in and not just be a full-time mom, but go and learn how to become a chef or learn how to become an interior designer. And then we'll tell this one story. So after we got married, Lisa was not working right off the bat. When we moved to Auburn and established a practice, she was staying home with the younger 3 kids that were with us most of the time at that time. And basically we started a practice in Auburn, a neurosurgery practice, and we hired what we thought professional office manager to run our business, because neither of us had ever run a professional medical practice before. I'd been in the military and, practicing neurosurgery as a military physician, and been off to war, and had never owned my own business. And then maybe a year and a half.
It was about a year and a half.
Yeah. So we got going, and then we realized, we weren't making any money. Like, I was working really hard, but the dollars weren't coming in. And
well, they weren't right. We both recognized that something wasn't right, that there was money that should be there that wasn't there.
Right. So long story short, our accountants couldn't figure it out. Our office manager wasn't figuring it out. And I asked Lisa, can you look at this and figure out what the problem is? Because she's smart and she understands how to look at things critically. And you figured out something bad was happening.
Yes. We had someone that was stealing from us, and literally in one instance, our consultants and accountants came down from Birmingham and said they let our office manager go and escorted her from the building. And they looked at me and I looked at them, and they were like, we're going to need you to step in until we, help you figure this out and, help you hire someone. So overnight, I went from being a stay-at-home, personal chef, caterer, interior designer, to being a medical practice administrator.
That's right.
Overnight.
And I can tell you from my perspective as, being a physician, like, they don't teach you, I think they do a better job now, but in those days, at least, they didn't teach us how to run businesses. So they trained all these people to do complicated medical things and then go out into the workforce and run really multi-million-dollar companies without any business training. And so, I didn't know how to fix the problem. And you came in and really, I think, from my perspective, one of the most beautiful things about your brain is that you'd never allow yourself to be trapped in a paradigm of this is how it has to be done.
Right.
And I think that turned out to be a real advantage for us in our practice, because Lisa came in and looked at every problem, not from how does every other office manager of a medical practice in Auburn, Alabama handle this particular problem, but rather, how do we look at the industry and see what the best practices are, and look at other industries that might have something to lend to this? And you really tore it apart and rebuilt it from the ground up as a novel sort of experiment in how to best run a medical practice. And even I'll never forget, as we built this, we moved from a small office. We were in a strip mall, right, at first, in an old children's clothing store, right?
Yep, the Grandoodles Children Clothing Store.
Yeah, and we came, I guess in 2009 maybe, had an opportunity to take some new office space on the campus of the Auburn University MRI research facility, which is this beautiful new building and beautiful location on the campus of that great university. And basically, Lisa had an opportunity then to pull out her old interior design talents and talk a second about just the way that you conceived and delivered building us a new office.
Well, I guess I had two things that I was interested in making sure was as perfect as it possibly could be. And the first was the patient experience. And the second was your time and energy. And I know this sounds, I guess if you hadn't lived with a neurosurgeon and also worked with him, you wouldn't understand this, but Lee is on his feet every single day, all day long. If he's in the office, he's on his feet, walking from patient room to patient room, standing in the area where he has to write his notes, talking to the patients, talking to his staff. And if he's in the OR, he's on his feet all day long. So, I mean, I had no idea that the job was not just mentally challenging, but the physical challenges of being a surgeon are really unbelievable. So I created a space that would minimize his standing and minimize the area he had to cover to see the patients he saw every clinic day, which was about 40 people. So 80 people a week, and then he did about 14 cases a week. So he had a lot of standing already. So I really tried to maximize the patient experience and minimize his effort that he had to expend to give the best patient experience.
And so she basically looked at the workflow of what I needed to do and the flow of how patients needed to enter and exit the office, and created this space where all of those things were maximally efficient. And we had people from all over the state and other industries that looked at our office as kind of a textbook of how you could design and deliver something that served at a very high level. And she ended up getting to do some consulting for other people in other industries. And really, it just showed an aspect of why I think you're one of the smartest people I've ever met. I always say the smartest person, of course, but you just can look at a problem. And folks, that's a lesson to take. Like don't always look at something that's put in front of you. And your first question is, how do other people do this? I mean, look at it as, what's the nature of the problem, and how can I break that problem down into its component parts, and how can I put them together in a way that's going to solve the problem in the best and most efficient way? Kind of like calculus, if you think about it. So anyway, that's kind of a piece of our background together that I think is interesting, how you've answered the bell over the course of your career and evolved and changed and grown and learned. But every piece of what you've done has added up to something that's useful in the present state. That's kind of an interesting thing, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. So what's something that what's a particular moment in your life that's been a big struggle for you?
Again, difficult question. Do you do this to everybody?
Everybody.
I think it kind of goes back to that same thing of feeling like I didn't take just one path and follow it. But I also recognize, I am smart enough to recognize that life and situations created my need to go and do things that I might not have necessarily set out to do. And I think in the long run, I look back and I know that God, He used me in all those moments and allowed me to be successful in places that I never thought I would be, because I needed to be able to have something. I think all of us do. We need to feel like we've contributed to society, that we've done something useful, that we're, important, and that things are not just seemingly unimportant, because all the things that all of us do, as long as our goal is to make our lives better, make the people around us better, make our world better, then we are moving forward. So I guess my hardest thing that I struggle with and still struggle with is not feeling significant.
Right.
That's kind of really where I kind of always circle back to feeling like I'm not doing enough or not doing it well enough.
Right. You struggled with that when we moved from Alabama to Wyoming. We worked together side by side for almost 11 years, and you were literally running the business that created income for our family, and getting being a side by side partner in me. So you had a sense that you were part of the team that made our family successful, right?
Right. And let me interrupt just for a second. When he says side by side, our desks were actually side by side at the office.
That's right.
And our desks at home were actually side by side. So we do everything we do is together.
Yep.
And so moving here to Wyoming was really challenging, because when I left my career again, I left my career in San Antonio and moved to Auburn, created a new one, left that when we moved to Wyoming. And you working for the hospital didn't leave me a place to help you with the medical part of your life, but instead I've focused on helping you with your writing and podcasting and your newsletter and all the other things that you're doing now. So again, I've turned that what felt like a negative into a positive and found a new way to feel useful and significant.
Well, that's beautifully said. But I think it ought to be said for everybody listening out there that there is nobody, no human being in any industry, any profession, who doesn't feel inadequate in some way.
Right.
I mean, all of us do. I mean, I think every brain surgeon, part of why we're a brain surgeon is to prove to ourselves or to somebody else in our life that we're intelligent, right? Like there's some reason why we tried so hard to finish at the top of the class and get into that position was to prove something to somebody. Like, so I think everybody struggles with the sense of inadequacy or are we doing enough? I look at you and your career and folks, if you're listening at home, like apply these things to yourselves. But I look at Lisa and I say, gosh, here's a person who has at every turn in her life done whatever was necessary to take care of the people she was responsible for, including going back to school, scratching out a new career, working 2 or 3 or 4 jobs at the same time. Like this is a person sitting to my right here who has literally saved the day for her family like multiple times and for other people. Like you have never failed. You never shrugged your shoulders and said, that's not my problem. You need to go get another job. You've always said, okay, what can I do to help? How can I fix this? What am I good at? What can I learn? And that's an inspiring thing to me. I applaud you for that. Today's International Women's Day. I'm nominating Lisa Warren as the winner of International Women's Day today. So you can vote on my website. How about that? So let's pivot for a second because we're running out of time. Tell me a favorite scripture or a quote that you have. If you're going to share something with us to leave people with something important today, what would you share?
I have a lot of scriptures that are important to me, but when you asked me to do this, I was thinking of, I have had a lot of hard things happen in my life. Yeah. And a lot of times I don't have a lot of sympathy for people that just throw in the towel. Right. Or just say that is someone else's problem. No, we're responsible for ourselves, but we're not just responsible for ourselves. We're responsible for the people around us and the people we care about and for our place in the world, the people we come in contact with. And Psalm 27, just the beginning of it, gave me a feeling of power, almost like I was it gave me the sense that I could fight through and deal with anything I was dealing with. And it's just the first 3 verses that I would say to myself from time to time. The Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear? The Lord is the strength of my life. Of whom shall I be afraid? When the wicked, even mine enemies and my foes, came upon me to eat upon my flesh, they stumbled and fell. Though a host should encamp against me, my heart shall not fear. The war should rise against me, in this will I be confident. And this that I'll be confident is in God. That's right. The person that, as long as I put my hope and my confidence in Him, I could handle all the things that happened to me, around me, and continue on and strive to be more and be successful and make a difference in the world. Wow.
We didn't talk about it in this episode because we've covered it in my books and we've talked about it a lot. But, when Lisa alluded to she's been through a lot of hard things, I mean, like me, she's been through a divorce. She's been through some difficult personal times. You lost a child right there alongside me when Mitch passed away. You lost your mom in January of 2018. And so those are stories that you can tell on your own in other venues, and we've told those stories in our books. But tell maybe just quickly, like, what is it that keeps you getting up in the morning when you've gone through something really hard like that? Like, how did you, from your perspective, carry on after we lost a child?
Well, I guess the short answer to that would be that I had people that counted on me. I had people I needed to take care of. We had employees that needed to be paid. We had family that counted on us. Our children counted on us. And I think all of us in this family, and I mean, both sets of our parents, our siblings, our close friends, we have surrounded ourselves with and grew up in a culture of you do what you have to do. You don't just stop when bad things happen, because bad things are going to happen. They haven't stopped happening to me. They will continue to happen because that's the world we live in.
Yeah.
So we live in a broken world, and I'm not going to be somebody who sits and just bemoans the fact that, this bad thing happened or that bad thing happened. It's get up, continue to believe that your confidence is coming from someone else, which is in my faith, I believe the Holy Spirit and God is my power. That's where I get my power from, and that's where I get my confidence from. And you keep going. You keep going.
That's right. Because if you sit down, you're done for. Right? If you quit, you're done for. The enemy will overwhelm you, and you'll never get back on your feet. You got to keep moving. Right. And so I can attest to the fact that having a partner when you're in those dark times, having you at my side is the only way I survived losing a child. And as a team, we got through that. I hope folks, everybody out there listening, I hope you have a Lisa Warren in your life. You don't, but I hope you have somebody close, somebody from your perspective who serves all the ways that she does. And I can just tell you, I've never encountered another human being with as many different skills that were at the top of your game. The old joke about jack of all trades and master of none. Like, she's somebody who has mastered many different things. And I just applaud you for the kind of brain and heart and spirit that you have. And you certainly made my life a whole lot better. And I hope that you've made the lives of people listening today all over the world better and given them some perspectives that maybe they didn't have. Hey, if you were going to toss a book out there, Lisa, for people that somebody just has to read, throw me a book that somebody ought to read. Okay.
Well, when we started that book a week challenge, of course, being the competitive person that I am.
Wait, what? You're competitive?
I tried to read more than Lee.
Yeah.
Because, you got to have something that you can get over on him. Like, this is a person but you're also a person that has many, many gifts and also master of many, many, many things. And we came up with a little, like a plan of we're never going to stray too far away from a book that brings us closer to the Lord. So we would read a book about our relationship with the Lord, strengthening our relationship with the Lord.
Right.
And then we would read a personal development book, something about business, or back in those days I read a lot of healthcare stuff, and something that like builds you up as a human being in whatever profession that you're in. And then a novel, because reading is supposed to be fun too. So,
right.
Out of those things, the books, when you asked me this, I was like, gosh, like what am I supposed to say? So I look at books that I've read over and over again, and there's very few of those that I've read multiple times. And one of the books that I've read multiple times is a book by J.D. Greer called Jesus Continued.
Yeah.
Why the Spirit inside of you is better than the Jesus, or why the Spirit inside you is better than the Jesus beside you.
Yeah.
And that
about
book,
the Holy Spirit.
Yes. And that book goes back to Psalm 27, that feeling of where my confidence comes from. And I know where my gifts come from. I know where my personality comes from. But that book just took all of those things and amplified it. I've read it probably a total of 4 times. I've bought it for multiple people.
Yeah.
Because it was one of those books that just really impacted me. And then the novel it was the very first time I think I read narrative nonfiction, was Behind the Beautiful Forevers, Life, Death, and Hope in the Mumbai Undercity by Catherine Boo. It read so much like a novel that when I found out it was a narrative nonfiction, I had to go back and read it again because
you thought it was fiction.
I was like, oh my gosh, this is real. And it's a beautifully disturbing look at poverty at its greatest measure. She lived in that area for 10 years to follow these people along, and just the underlying spirit that these people have, their ability to go through hard things and continue to see hope is remarkable. Please read it, because it is one of those books that it's heartbreaking, but it's a book that will stay with you for a very long time.
And I love books that, I talked about this in the last episode, I love books that fundamentally change how an adult person who's pretty squared away looks at a particular thing.
Right.
And so J.D. Greer's book, Jesus Continued, is about the Holy Spirit, and he takes what Jesus himself said about the Holy Spirit. All of us think that having Jesus next to us would be the greatest thing ever. Like if Jesus showed up at your house today and was hanging out with you, you would think that was the best thing ever. But what Jesus said to the disciples in the Gospel of John was, I'm going away and the Holy Spirit is coming, and that's better for you because he's going to put the power of God inside you. And so what he said is that you can do even greater things with the Holy Spirit inside you than you could do with me next to you.
Right.
And that book it kind of blew our brains up.
Yeah.
Frankly, J.D. Greer's written some other really great books. His most recent one is called Not God Enough, and that's a powerful, amazing book too. But I love how you've encountered a couple of books like that kind of shook your worldview up, and certainly Behind the Beautiful Forevers is another one of those that Lisa really read it and thought it was fiction.
Right.
And then as she was about done with it, I think the first time she told me about it, and we were talking, and on Amazon it says this is a nonfiction book nominated for a Pulitzer Prize, and she was like, "Wait, what? It's not. It's real. It really happened." And then it became even more heartbreaking,
right? Because
those kids are real. Those stories are real about poverty and destitution, and we don't have that context in the United States really to understand that level of poverty that people are going through. And so those are two books. I'll put the links in the show notes for you. Lisa, thanks so much for your time today. I really appreciate you coming on the show, and I hope people have gained. I know that they've gained some value from getting to know you a little bit better.
Well, thanks. I hope so. It's a hard act to following Lee Warren, so I really stressed out about it. But we are a team, 100%. Absolutely. Anybody that knows us, that really knows us, they know that we are both individually strong, but together we're indomitable.
That's right. And so, folks, if you are listening out there, if you're not listening, you won't hear this, so I shouldn't say it. I always think that's funny. If you're listening out there, so those of you who are listening out there, I hope and pray that you've been blessed in some ways by getting to know Lisa in a way that, like I have. And I hope that you have somebody in your life who is just instrumental in you being the person that you are. And I've said it to a million people, but essentially all of the good things about Lee Warren, the adult human that I am right now, have a lot to do with your patience and your nurturing and your pointing out things and you're helping me grow and change and become the person that I am. And I thank you for that. You've really impacted my life, not just because you're my wife, but just as a human being, being next to you for the last, 15 years almost. And thank you. You just have made my life so much better.
I love you.
I love you too. And that's a little romance for you there on the podcast. But hey, we have a little motto in our family. I always start almost every episode, almost everything I write. I talk about how when you know in your heart that there's something you got to do, when there's a change that God is begging and demanding of you, when your spirit tells you that you got to change your mind about something, you always have to start tomorrow.
No, start today.
No, wait. You don't start tomorrow?
No. Not tomorrow.
Okay, so when do you start?
You start today.
Hey, thanks for listening. The Dr. Lee Warren podcast is listener supported. Check out patron.podbean.com/Dr. Lee Warren. That's patron.podbean.com/Dr. Lee Warren. Patrons and partners get free books, transcripts, special patron-only episodes, and more. And partners like you allow us to stay ad-free and keep growing. Please subscribe to the show so you automatically get every episode. And if you like the show, you'll love my weekly letter. Check out my writing at drleewarren.substack.com, drleewarren.substack.com.
DrLeeWarren.com. Get the free newsletter every week for my best prescriptions for becoming healthier, feeling better, and being happier through the power of faith and neuroscience smashing together via self-brain surgery. DrLeeWarren.substack.com. And if you need prayer, go to the prayer wall at wleewarrenmd.com/prayer. The theme music for the show is Make Us One by Tommy Walker, graciously provided for free by the great folks over at TommyWalkerMinistries.org. Check it out and consider supporting them. TommyWalkerMinistries.org. Remember, you can't change your life until you change your mind, and the good news is you can start today. I'm Dr. Lee Warren. I'll talk to you soon. God bless you, friend. Have a great day.